I'm back. Happy holidays to all of you. And let's play games, right? Rapid games. How I play, right? How I play. You know, so this videos, as I mentioned many times before, are gonna be helpful to everybody. Actually, you may have to change the settings, -100 maybe. So it's gonna be like me playing, explaining move by move, how I think from the opening all the way to the ending, hopefully, right? So these videos are really helpful because you get that the impression how like the master would think move by move, what kind of ideas I'm looking for, what kind of ideas I'm looking for my opponents. You would see that I'm looking at my opponent's ideas just like I'm looking at my own ideas. There are some concerns sometimes when people play the game is you look for their own plans, but they skip their opponent's plans, and you don't want to do this. You want to like you're playing with an opponent. Um, so you just look at his ideas just like you are having your own ideas. So we have to know it's his move, and we are still he's playing the English. We could play G6. You could, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, you could play G6 against everything, whether it's E4, D4, Knight F3, even C4, because it could usually transpose to like D4 becomes like a D4 opening. Um, you know, so he's likely to play d4. He may play here, but so we play like d6. This becomes a modern, actually. It's no longer the English per se. So we could play knight c6, attacking here. So usually there's a couple ways you could deal with this, like even push here, bishop e3. The all may lead to like e5. You could still play. You could go back, but you could also play here. With the idea, if he plays here, is this c5. This is like a variation that could be interesting for black. So he could play here, gaining a tempo, meaning that he's attacking this knight because this is actually what he's trying. But you do play c5, and the idea is c5 is adding a support toward the knight, defending it, and also toward the center. So if he takes this way, which he can, right? You don't want to take this way because this leaves the knight hanging, and that's going to be a piece, and also he's attacking the rook. So you do have to take back with the knight. So what I achieve here is this bishop diagonal is pretty good for the bishop early on, and it's funny that this may transpose to like King's India, but I don't think it's here. This is still like it's still like the modern defense. So the knight develops. He plays f3, logical. He doesn't want to see. So when I played here, I was really looking at this as well, like the bishop, maybe have to move somewhere. So he played f3. Defending against this idea, we just castle. So he might play like bishop d3, knight e2, this specific order. Yeah, that sounds about true. Maybe here even knight g3, maybe even knight d4. It's probably knight g3. It's possibly here, but so that he gets his bishop out. I mean, this is not really entirely a bad idea, but he could also play knight f4. He may be looking at this kind of control. Um, so I'm moving my queen to connect the two rooks. And also avoiding one of the knights to go to d5 because it's being pinned. King f2, that's kind of interesting. So getting our knight, maybe he's getting out of the pin, which is funny though. That's a funny way of dealing with this pin. So he maybe wants to play here, but he couldn't play it when his king was on e1 because his queen is lining up. That's kind of funny though, the way he's doing it. So he's still looking at bishop moves, or bishop e2, and maybe castle manually. um, but he also looking at knight d5. Maybe knight e5. Let's see. He's still gonna play here. But you do have to be careful here. This may allow like queen takes e2, e7 is under. It's kind of interesting in a way. I don't know if this move works. Knight g4, he moved out of the way. You could sack here. The idea is like you could sack and then grab here, making use of the potential attack on the king. It may work, may not. He went king f. He went here, which This kind of blocks access to the rook in h1. You could castle this way, but you're locking access to this rook. Not really ideal. And he didn't get to play knight d5, so maybe we just play here. So now we are attacking on c4. You could still play knight d5, however, I could take knight takes. We do have to defend this one, so maybe rook e8. And then e2 becomes a pawn that you could grab. He plays b3, defending c4. I mean, this move almost work with the idea the bishop attacks, and let's see, is knight d5. Let's play here, protecting e7 from whenever he playing knight d5. So when he plays knight d5, he's attacking this way. So knight takes e7 is a free pawn. There's also the rook is under potential concerns here that he could try to grab it. So he plays bishop e2, right? That makes sense. Um, so no, any kind of tactic like this may not work because he could take, even the bishop could take the knight. So let's say if you play here, this sack doesn't really matter. It's not relevant anymore. The real question is, could I expand? No, I don't think this works. The bishop is not connected anymore to c3. Things are getting a little bit interesting. So maybe a6, b5 to try to get activity on this. Open up the file here. So maybe the knight goes here. The knight at f4 probably goes to d5. Makes sense. Keeping the knight on c3 so it could defend e2. So for example, if you were to play this and make use of the square on b6, I know that I'm weakening up b6 because if he were to play here, I could take any kind of grab would allow queen takes c2. That could be a free pawn. I wonder if the queen might be trapped though. I don't think it is. He plays e4 defending the pawn and defending b5 idea too, which is kind of interesting. I guess maybe he was trying to play knight d5, takes, and then bishop here. Not cool, sir. Not cool. So maybe you have to play here. I cannot allow knight. So he was threatening knight here. Takes, and then some kind of bishop here, which would be the knight supporting the bishop here. The queen is not really ideal in this square. It would be almost trapped or trapped. So here, bishop c6, the point of this move is I'm meeting his knight by taking. So I probably have to take. If you take here, that gains a tempo. So I may have to move the bishop. So I may as well take right now with a bishop. You don't want to lose turn. So I could take with the bishop. The idea, if you were to take with the knight, I could still take. And eventually get my bishop in a better square. So he plays pawn takes here. We could play queen here. Potentially, I could also take. Take would help him a little bit because queen takes. I don't have rook c8. If I were to take and play rook c8, that would be good to take over the file, but I'm not taking it. The queen would take, not the bishop. So maybe queen b4 was the idea I want to take. If he takes with the queen, I'm attacking this one. So if I get to a situation where I take, bishop takes, then I can play rook c8. So the rook gets to open file. So we get to those open files. So I'm happy about this one because obviously rook belongs to the open file, and that's one way to do it. So this move, now we could try to go for check, king f1. You can see this rook on h1 is stuck. We could play here. It's a check first. I wonder if bishop h6 do anything for us. It should. It is also here. So maybe I could get the knight to c5. So I could get the knight to c5 to attack b3. If he misplay, like play the bishop here, there's also rook c1. So that the reason White is in trouble is because his king is not lining up. The rook is not even in the game on h1. So he plays here, which is fine. I could take, bishop takes, and then I get the other knight involved. You have the two bishops here, but the two bishops are not really active. As a matter of fact, the knight would be active on whether on e5 or c5. So this knight move is very clever because I play knight c5, getting the knight activated in a better square. So he's gonna play bishop here. He's still defending for now. Or I could play bishop c3, so try to weakening up everything if I can. Maybe this. Um, Supposedly this. So he's gonna take. So I'm trying to go for e5. So I'm trying to go for the weak pawns, right? So should he take? I think maybe he has like queen e1, defending e5. So now the a5 is under attack. Like I'm trying to take it next move. So queen e1. The game still he didn't see it. So now we take it. It's a free pawn. This is actually a good pawn to take because that's like a pawn majority 2-for-1. Also b3 is extremely weak. So maybe I could play like. It almost feels like I could win it next turn. It's like here, he moves away. This queen b4. Maybe it's queen b4 even. So b5, bishop e2, queen b4. That should almost win the pawn. The king is also exposed on f2. Now he played here, so he could then connect the rook, but it's a little bit too late, right? It's too late for that because I took a pawn. He had to play queen e1. So after take here, queen e1 does defend the pawn. Queen e1 here. Like here. So you really defend the pawn on a5 because if you take, obviously, he could still defend b3 and a5 that way. It's still complicated, still good for black. So I could take and rook c3, and I suppose this wins a pawn like this way, and then he takes, and then I play rook c3. I think it's queen d2, but queen b4, and it should almost win a pawn. So he could play queen. If he plays queen d2, it's rook takes. That's also a very nice tactic. You always want to keep an eye on tactics. So he knows this is trouble. So I could play queen b4, and then I could collect this pawn. He could play rook here if he wants to, but this queen c5, it's check, and then you could grab the rook for free. So now we could take, supposedly with the rook, so we could keep an attack. You could take with the queen, but I don't think take with the queen is kind of like, he could take maybe and rook here, and I just want to keep the attack going. So maybe it's like here, check, and then queen here. The king is kind of in a bad spot. I may not matter if if he takes here because I'm having a good attack. He has to play here supposedly. Correct. Defending this pawn. I mean, he's actually lost, but it's just a matter of time. Yeah, we could trade. That's fine. Supposedly, we could trade. This is two connected pass pawn. So I could win with these pawns alone. His king is cut off from the game, so even if he were to play here, I mean, he could play here, but I think it's over. The rook gets in here. There is rook c4 maybe. There's a lot of ways you could win. As a matter of fact, this is the easiest. You just connect. You play b3 for rook e2. It's a lot easier to win this one. So I could play here, and then he could check king g7. So and then I could play e4. He could take this pawn. I could play here. He could play here, and rook b3. That's supposed to be winning. Because he goes here, it's the rook would act in a way to block access to the rook to stop the promotion. So that's winning. He could go the other way here. I could still play this. Okay, now my queen. So if he takes here, I could go here. I mean, this it's just a queen. Well, maybe he resigns. He's not resigning. Okay, he's not resigning anytime soon. So now we go after the king. I mean, there's nothing much to discuss here except that going for the king. I mean, I have plenty of time here. It just doesn't make sense the way he's playing on. So here, rook takes. We are just going for mate or grab the rook here. This queen h4. There's a lot of things here. It just doesn't matter what we do as long as we are winning. We take the free pawn. So this move is coming in. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things happening. So here he goes here, of course. We just promote another queen. There's plenty of ideas, plenty of moves. Pretty boring. We could check back again, support the pawn. We could play rook here. Okay, we could take with check. I don't know what he's playing on, to be honest. I mean, this is kind of, in a way, it's disrespectful, but anyways, because I could win. I mean, even if your opponent win this one, even if white were to win, you don't really achieve anything by winning a game like this. It's just usually you just want to play another game. I mean, that's the reason why I play a lot of bullet games, just so I could play a lot of games in the less time. So typically, you just want to like tell yourself, well, this game is not working. I just play like another game, right? More competitive game, so I can win or lose is okay. So he resigned here after like a while. This position comes down to small details. Again, I explain move by move. I traded queens knowing I could probably hang on to the queen. I mean, I don't. I could still like play like queen check, king here. But sometimes when you're dealing with two pawns, like two connected pass pawns, this is really strong pawns. Like this is very strong connected pass pawns, and this is what we're looking for. Strong players would be looking for these kind of pawns, because these pawns could actually, they could actually beat a rook. Believe it or not, if the pawns are like so much advanced here, or even in these two squares, they could actually promote. One pawn may be taken, the other pawn could promote. So this kind of pawns and the king is not really in the game. Even if the king is in the game, it's still like two pawns, right? So I think the issue is not here. It's actually how my opponent played. His major issue is actually considering um, playing king f2. King f2 is okay. I think it's king g1 that doesn't make sense. This move is really like a waste of move and really doesn't make any kind of sense when it comes to practical means. You're blocking access to this rook. You don't want to block any access to your pieces ever. You don't want to block your bishop access. You don't want to block your knight access. You don't want to block any of your pieces, including the rooks. So he had bishop e2. So let's say bishop e2 makes a lot of sense. You want to play bishop e2, rook e1, and then you could play king g1 with the idea that he manually castle and without having any kind of trouble. But when you play here, it just doesn't make sense that the king is sitting on g1 and blocking access to the rook. So if we go move by move, he played bishop e2, but it almost feels like he's not playing with the rook, like almost down a rook, right? And I felt like he could have played knight d5 early. Like maybe knight d5 could have happened a lot early at some point. Could have been better. Um, but the most concerning move for him that led to like really not a good position is actually having the king here. So the rest of the game is pretty, straightforward here, and this is actually what I wanted to explain. Is here you kind of like, if you were to take this way, it looks like my knight is not doing anything in this setup, right? And maybe here he could hold. But you could see that later on in the game, just to show you guys what I mean by this. Um, White has two bishops, right? You would always assume that two bishops work, right? In this situation, the bishops are really, it feels like they have some diagonals, and this is actually very hard to explain. because bishops belong to the diagonals. Like they are very strong on diagonals. You could tell that these diagonals are being controlled by white. But sometimes there are some weird exception with bishops, as you know, when it comes to like even if they have diagonals, sometimes and few times maybe they are not as good. Meaning that you could see that slowly, like once I started moving here, if we go move by move, you could see that after taking here, you could see that this bishop is coming in, the knight is coming in, and the bishop on this bishop specifically, not this one, the light square one is not as active anymore. It does have some couple squares here and here, but it's not the huge diagonal like this one, for example, right? So the bishop on d3 is not as active anymore. Uh, Here it was a little bit active, maybe more diagonals, but once you could see that, it's being limited by its by the squares. But you could see after here, you know, the bishop is like defending, a pawn. And once I played here and we exchanged bishops, it becomes clear that the knight really outplay the bishop. So it's kind of interesting that how sometimes two bishops, even when with open diagonals around here, like even here, they sometimes may not perform. Black is active because the rook is really active here. So there's like a couple of imbalances here. You always have to keep an eye on things. Also, I think white was concerned about rook c2. So that's something that that's the reason why he played here. If let's say he plays a random move, like let's say he plays g3, king g2, just to get the rook activated, his potential rook here. And then obviously here, it's almost like g5 wins. Or, if he plays here, g5 may just remove the defender. I mean, it's still, like, it can still defend, but um, I'm assuming there's a lot of things here. Maybe I could still play knight d7 and knight c5. The rook is already on c2. That's also problematic. I could just play the same concept and b3 would be, easier to grab that way. But rook c2 is also very concerning for him. But the point is, in this game, there's a couple imbalances here before we end the video. The first imbalance is how the rook is not active at all. And sometimes what it takes is like one imbalance. Sometimes, if it's crucial enough, you could win a game. But you typically need two weaknesses. So the rook is also on c8 is extremely strong, rook c2, and also white has weak pawns. So there's like three issues for white. Now you look at black's position, he doesn't have weaknesses at all, right? So he have active pieces after knight c5. So you have three imbalances. Typically you need two weaknesses to win, right? So you have three. The rook is not active on h1, and also you do have weak pawns for white, and you do have the rook activity on c8. So you just use this advantage, you use these three things for your own advantage, meaning that should you know that this is weaknesses, you have to attack the pawns. I mean, that's good to know, but what to do about it? Sometimes people are able to point out the weaknesses, but they may not know how to win. So once you are able to have this kind of, you're able to tell, you just look, sometimes it becomes simple that, that pawn becomes weak because you're not really going after this rook in h1, right? It's inactive, but you're not going to, it's going to be staying inactive. So let it inactive for the next 50 years. Yeah, that's fine. It's white's job to try to get it active. As a matter of fact, like try to play g3, king g2, rook e1, rook f1. But it's our job for black is to try to go after directly after the weakness, not necessarily after the rook. So the weakness for me was around b3 and a4. So, and that led to black having a good game and winning the game effectively. So this is still like positional tactics at the very end because I was able to win two pawns and then you were able to, um, and also white played a lot of king f2 later, and the king safety was pretty complicated. So, excuse me. So that pretty much the reason why I won the game. I explained move by move so people get the idea how the game could, what kind of ideas I'm looking at, what kind of opponents' ideas I could do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this video and stay tuned for more stuff. Again, happy holidays to all of you or some of you. Thank you, folks. Take care.